Hey, it's Ricky from All Sorts of Words, and
I damn near killed myself making this video, so I hope you appreciate how much I love you. Back in like 2004, I got out of comics. I sold the hell out of my collection so that I could afford a move across the state. The money helped, but just not having to lug around thousands of comic books also helped. But I gave them away for a song. So in 2020, when I got back into comics, I wanted to pick up where I left off in terms of like readings. I wanted to refresh my memory, read the best stories that I was reading at the time, and start my collection up again. And I went a little bonkers. I started collecting whole runs. That was my thing. I didn't really care so much about first appearances when I got back into the hobby as I did having reading material, filling my house with books to read. The run took priority over the individual issue. Now I was picking up, major and minor keys here and there when the price was right, but primarily my focus was on a continuous story. So I picked up in the beginning with where I left off. Stories that I remembered loving a whole bunch and really getting me into DC, and it turned into this madness. But I have to tell you, I was hesitant to make this video for a while because it's a major pain in the ass. These are the runs that I've collected. I'm going in no particular order, and I'm not trying to wax poetic about all of them. I'll talk a little bit here and there about the reasons why I got started with certain collections, but I really don't want this to be a 10-hour video. So I'll go a little bit faster than we might be used to on my channel where I just blather incessantly, but here we go. These are all the comic runs in my collection. Jesus, I'm really going to try to lift these up. This is the Ross box. This box contains all of my Alex Ross. Alex Ross is what got me into DC Comics. I used to go to the Borders in Concord, New Hampshire, back when Borders was a thing. Ugh. And my then girlfriend, now wife, Helen, and I, we would sit in these big, comfy, pillowy chairs and get piles of magazines and comic books, like trade paperbacks. Magazines for her were really expensive. Trade paperbacks were a waste of money for me. So I would just read and she would just read. And we would sit there for like 3-4 hours, go catch a movie, grab dinner, head home. Great date. And the side effect of that was that you read pretty much everything they had. I read all of their Ultimate Marvel books. I read all of the Punisher at the time. I read all of the Ghost Rider, the Spider-Man, everything I can get my hands on. And believe it or not, I was such a Marvel reader at the time that I even went so far as to be like, they only had trades 1, 3, and 5, but I'd read them skipping 2 and 4 because, I just wanted to read everything they had, right? Well, on one night, I finished everything. Literally everything. If you can picture a trade paperback section in a bookstore today, it was probably about half that size back then, but I read everything. And so I went to the DC section because I had lost all hope and will to live. Cover shopping, just looking for something that would be, kind of entertaining, right? And I came across a series of images that I'd never seen anything like it in comics. It literally knocked my socks off. And that was Alex Ross's Kingdom Come. Now, I know it's written by Mark Waid, but the entire story was conceptualized by Alex Ross and illustrated by Alex Ross. So, it's his book. But it blew me away. The story was fantastic and the art was incredible. I'd never seen anything like it. So for the first time in all of my trade paperback reading at the bookstore, this was the first time I was like, no, I need to own this and read it again. So I bought it, and that's kind of what started me being interested in DC. I'm going to date myself here. But I went to the comic rack and said, you know what? I'm going to give something of DC a try. I want to read what is new in DC. What can they wow me with? Can they pull me in as a reader? And the first book I got was Identity Crisis. It was a 7-issue event that is really adult, like shockingly adult. It's even written by a man named Brad Meltzer, who is primarily a fiction writer, like mystery novels. But Brad broke his ankle off in this story that just captured me, pulled me in, made the heroes look fallible and mean. And I loved it. So I wanted more. That's what started my DC reading. Jump ahead to 2020, and I'm trying to recapture those days, and it begins with the Ross box. This not only includes everything of Kingdom Come, but also The Kingdom, a series of books that were like ancillary to the Kingdom Come. And this box also then continues into the 2 sequels of Kingdom Come. Oh, you didn't know there were 2 sequels to Kingdom Come? Not like small issues here and there, one-shot kind of deals, but like full-blown sequels. We'll go over that in another video, but understand it's a lot of issues. The complete Sandman run. What can you say about Neil Gaiman's Sandman that hasn't been said by every dead horse on the planet? But let's pick up a stick and beat this bad boy. Sandman is a fantasy science fiction-y story about the gods of the DC universe, but not like Wonder Woman's boring gods we've heard about before, but more like conceptual tulpa gods. Gods that are created by our understanding of their existence. It's weird. When I heard Netflix was going to be making a show out of it, I was like, there's no way you can capture what happens in these books on a TV show without spending all of the money. And so they spent all of the money. But it follows, I'm going to do this in one take to prove I know them. Dream, death, desire, despair, destiny, delirium, but she used to be called Delight before the 7th sibling went away and hid destruction. Yes. So it's those 7 deities and just the weird stuff they get up to, and that's the simplest elevator pitch I can give you, but understand it's 75 issues and a ending issue called Orpheus that ties everything together and completes the series. There is another series called Overture that happened later on. I never read it, so I didn't collect it, but this is the main one that I was proud of. I finished this collection like 6 months before the show dropped, and I love it to death. I continue to go back and find new things about this series, and so like, I don't know. I'm really proud that I was able to finish this one because this is a grail run for a lot of people. This book. I know so many people that spend hundreds of dollars on the Absolute editions that are beautiful as well, but like for me, I'm an issue boy. There's 2 boxes to this one. This is only box number 2 because I will kill myself if I have to grab box number 1. But this is 2 boxes that make up the Batman Who Laughs story. So really what's in these boxes is a series called Dark Knight's Metal and then Dark Knight's Death Metal. It's the story of the Dark Multiverse. The Dark Multiverse is like, picture Miles Morales if you're into Spider-Man, right? All of those universes are generally optimistic. They have plants that feed squirrels and squirrels that feed wolves, and then wolves protect humans, and then humans develop society, and everything kind of gels. We all kind of work together for the purpose of just developing life. Well, the Dark Multiverse is if all of that is reversed. Instead of seeds from plants feeding squirrels, they poison the squirrels to kill off all of the squirrels, and then that necrosis affects the wolves, who get so hungry they start eating us. It's a universe of terrible consequences where everything just keeps falling apart. Those universes are home to a pantheon of DC heroes like we know, but it's all the dark, twisted, horrible versions. Like, I think something cool that they did was every universe where there's a Bruce Wayne, he is the primary antagonist. He wipes out everybody and like steals their power for himself in every universe, in the Dark Multiverse. And so it's kind of cool that you flip the script over here and Batman's kind of like a jaded hero who doesn't really always play well with others. But in other universes, no, he's just rolling fools. I have the full run of Dark Knight's Metal and Death Metal that tells the story of the Dark Multiverse and that whole thing by Greg Capullo. I love it, and it's shockingly optimistic, and if you're also a metalhead like me, then you'll have a really great time. Justice League International and Justice League Europe. These are two series that are just, they're so fun because they follow the less known, more interesting, quite frankly, heroes of the DCU. I've always said the difference between Marvel and DC is Marvel is normal people with powers. DC, they're all gods. They were normal people at one point, but the powers they get are so ridiculously overpowered. It's hard for them to live normal lives anymore, and usually it's about like their powers ruining everything, or powering up their villains. It's crazy what happens to these characters. But Superman's effectively a god, so is Wonder Woman. Batman's like an intellectual god. Flash is a speed god. Aquaman's a water god. So on and so forth. These are like Booster Gold, the Blue Beetle. Just people that you don't really necessarily care about, but there are heroes and there's work to be done. So this is like a marketing genius named Maxwell Lord putting a team together to be the Justice League International. And what does that look like? How do they make money? It's just a really fun time. And it builds a lot of character development that you see pay off decades later. Like, these teams seem inconsequential now, but later on when we get into some of the major storylines that happen in DC, like with Brightest Day, these characters all come back and they play huge roles. Oh god, lifting these sucks. Crossed. I made 2 videos for Crossed already. One that goes over literally every single book in this collection, and another one that goes into a deep dive into the story, why it's important to me, and why it's awful. But in brief, it's a zombie virus that isn't a zombie virus that ruins the planet. And if you want an idea, a brief idea of what my other 2 videos are about and what this series is about, please pause this video, go to Google Images search, type in Crossed comic covers, hit enter, and then forgive me for what I just did to your night of sleep. The complete death of Superman. Now, this isn't just his death, this is also his rebirth, him coming back to life, but this is everything. This begins a short run of Superman books. This is actually when Superman kills other Kryptonians. Whenever there's a Justice League story where someone refers to like, yeah, Superman killed people once, this is where it happens, this cool book. He goes to another dimension where it's Kryptonians who took over Earth and they killed everybody in minutes. And the whole time he's fighting them, they're threatening him the second we get to Earth. Literally the second we get to Earth, we're going to cause a genocide hitherto unseen in moments. And you won't even know that it's happening until most of it's already done. Clark didn't want to take that risk, and so he put them in a chamber and he used gold kryptonite, which instantly kills them, and he killed all of them. And that kind of haunts him. It happens around the time before the death of Superman, so if you're going to build a Death of Superman run, I think this is an excellent place to start because it sets the tone for why doesn't Superman just murk Doomsday from the jump? Because he just got off of killing people and he's really kind of turned off from it. This is where the Death of Superman officially begins because this, and this are all cameos. At the last couple pages, there's like a big Rocky fist punching a wall that says Doom, Doom, and they're building up to his big release. Like, they were marketing pretty heavily that like Superman was in trouble with this next villain coming up. The Death of Superman is my earliest memory of DC comic books because when I was a kid, me and my friends would all just like go to the store, buy books that we thought were cool, and then just have our own little library exchange system. That's all we could do. We didn't have comic book stores in Deerfield, New Hampshire, where I grew up, so we were at the mercy of what we could find at our local convenience store. So if I bought Spider-Man and my friend Will bought Batman, now we could trade stories, and it was never like I got these 10 issues in a row. It was always like Web, Spectacular, Amazing, and he got Detective, Batman, Robin. So you never really got full stories. You just got kind of experiences with characters. But there was a company called Building 19 where I was growing up in New Hampshire. And they were specialty masters in buying like extra stock, right? So, you know, if Walmart ordered 10,000 plastic chairs, but they only needed 6, they would sell at a discount 4,000 plastic chairs to this company, who then sold them to, you know, poor people like me. Well, you have to understand, The Death of Superman and his return were enormous books. Millions of copies of books being printed and sold nationally. So what Building 19 did was they would buy all of this stock of extra comic books, bundle them together, and say, here's the whole story. So for like $25, you'd get 40 issues of this is the entire Death of Superman. And if you give them another $25, here's the entire rebirth of Superman. That was really the first time I ever read comics in continuity, and it set me up to be the horrible loser you see today. Side note, and this really is going to be another video, but Death of Superman's horrible. It's awful. It's really, really bad. And I'm not saying that like ironically, like, oh, I'm so much smarter than the average person. Like, no, legit, it's really dreadful. I'll give you a preview of how dreadful it is, in fact. Believe it or not, but they don't tell you anything about Doomsday in the whole story at all until Superman has died, come back, and then he gets a 2-issue series called Hunter Prey, which maybe it's 3 issues. And it's Darkseid having to deal with Doomsday and teaming up with Superman to kill him again. And it took years of this giant rock monster showing up, killing Superman and dying, and like nobody knows anything about him. Pull that today. Seriously, try to pull that today. Some villain shows up, beats the hell out of Spider-Man and kills him, and then like 2 years later we find out who that villain is. No one would be cool with that, and it isn't cool when you read it as an adult. This is bad. It's bad. Legion of Superheroes, volumes 2 and 3. One of the problems I always had with Marvel Comics was I don't think the X-Men make sense as a part of the larger Marvel Comics continuity. So like Captain America's on ice, right? Comes out of the ice bath, says, I'm going to be a superhero again. Let's make America great, or whatever Captain America said at the time. This guy, Captain America, Steve Rogers, witnessed World War II, witnessed Nazis, literal Nazis, not like the your politics don't align with mine, you're a Nazi kind of Nazis, but like train operating monsters, you know what I'm saying? Well, Captain America comes out of the deep freeze, joins up with the Avengers, and in this same universe, there are government-sanctioned giant death robots who break into homes and steal children from their beds. And Captain America's not saying anything? Captain America's not doing anything? And I know there's going to be someone out there that's like, no, well, in issue 235 of whatever the hell, Captain America definitely said, yeah, but what did he do? You're going to tell me that in a universe where the government is co-signing robot death squads to kidnap children from their beds, Captain America is just going to be cool with it. I don't buy that. But if you take X-Men and you consider it to be its own universe, and just, I know there's crossovers, but just ignore them. And you just look at the X-Men as their own comic universe, all of a sudden it becomes so much more appealing to me. An alternate dimension where people are born with powers and then punished by their governments for having them is kind of amazing. That's a really cool story that I want to read. But when you take into account like Spider-Man thwipping through New York City, and then there's like a mother of 2 getting kidnapped by a giant robot, and he's just like, well, none of my business. It just doesn't make sense to me. The Legion of Superheroes is the X-Men in the future. And the fact that they're in the future, the 35th century to be specific, they are alleviated of a lot of those continuity screw-ups. Like, what do you mean people would be cool with like Earth racism when Superman's around? Who would care? Superman's the world's most famous and beloved alien. Nobody cares that he's an alien. But in the future, you can kind of ignore those things and just focus on the story. You don't need to worry about a larger continuity. So they get weird with it. They have weird heroes, weird villains, weird events. They tie into a resurrection of Darkseid called the Great Darkness Saga, which is still one of the best stories you could ever read. I love the Legion. The Suicide Squad. Now, this is the original Suicide Squad from Ostrander in the 1980s. 87 is when it started. This scratches two itches for me. One, I always want to know more about DC villains. I love to hear why are they the way that they are when they're really on the cusp of an advanced human civilization. Like, if you just let Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman run the show, Earth will be launched into the 75th century in terms of technology and world peace. So, like, what about that universe makes these people crazy? And so I love to read stories about them. The other thing I love about the Suicide Squad run from the 80s is I'm a huge Batgirl fan, Barbara Gordon. And these stories, at around, I want to say the midway point, that's what establishes Barbara Gordon as Oracle. That's what actually establishes the Killing Joke story by Alan Moore in the main DC continuity. Up until this point in time, the Killing Joke was just kind of a side story in the DCU. It was a single one-shot book. This is where, like, those flashback events are retold and then solidified in main continuity. So these are actually pretty important to Barbara as a character. The JLA run by Grant Morrison. Someone comes up to you tomorrow and says, I want to read Justice League. I want to know what they're about. I'm coming in from the ground floor. Tell me what I need to know about these characters. You'll get no better than Grant Morrison's JLA run. Not only does it contain some of the most seminal stories to the Justice League in general, like the Tower of Babel, it contextualizes the characters in a way that you can't really get anywhere else. Some JLA stories, like the Meltzer run, are really big on spreading the love over multiple characters and even like uplifting some characters. Like that's where Black Canary became the leader of the team. That's where Black Lightning became the leader of the team. That was cool. But this JLA run, this is like core DC superheroes dealing with bigger than life problems. And they also do something with Darkseid that will follow him for the rest of his character career. The whole Darkseid is ... Darkseid is meaning he's eternal. That phrase that keeps popping up in the Mr. Miracle run by Tom King. That gets its start here, in fact. Okay. Do you ever wonder what 12 years in continuous DC continuity looks like? It looks like this. So when I got back into comics, like I said, I wanted to collect what I was reading before, and I wanted to collect what was coming next. And so I, in my infinite wisdom, collected every single Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Detective Comics, Action Comics, Green Lantern, Aquaman, Flash, and every major DC event from 2004 to the conclusion of the New 52 in 2016. I got all of it. That image that I'll show you again in a second, that image of those green and pink boxes with the interchanging lids, that's all the New 52 in order. I didn't put them in by individual heroes because I'm a psychopath. I put them in, I bought all the individual runs, right? So I had like Green Lantern New Guardians, The Flash, Justice League of America, because that's a different book, Superman, all of them. I had them piled around my room in infinite piles. And I went to comicbookreadingorder.com, which is an invaluable resource if you want to make actual like reading runs. And I went through issue by issue. What does it say to come next? And I grabbed them book by book by book, and I filled a box. And then I kept going, and I labeled the boxes. 10 boxes it fills up. Every Batman book, every Superman book, all the JLA. It's a lot of reading. But before that New 52, when you start with Identity Crisis, you get Identity Crisis, you get all the lead up to Infinite Crisis, which included a really cool thing called 1 Year Later, where at the time readers knew that this big crisis event was coming. It was in publication. We knew it was coming. It wasn't a surprise. But they came out with books at the time leading up to this event called 1 Year Later, where it showed how dramatically things were different. How like heroes were gone. Some were dead, and we didn't know why. And so we're reading these 1 year later books before Infinite Crisis. And then Infinite Crisis hits, changes everything. And then after Infinite Crisis, we get the Fallout issues from that. And then a little later on, we get things like Blackest Night, and then we get Brightest Day, one of the sequels to Kingdom Come. We'll talk about it later. And all that leads up to the reboot event of Flashpoint. And then, so those other boxes that you see with it, the ones labeled 1 through 5, that is all of Identity Crisis all the way through Flashpoint, everything. And Flashpoint ends in that number 5 box, and then New 52 begins in the very next one. Although, spoiler alert here, I called an audible on the transition from Flashpoint to New 52. And if you know, you know, but if you don't, we'll go over it one day when I review those books. But the New 52 series is born from Watchmen. So it actually goes Identity Crisis all the way through Flashpoint, Watchmen, it's in those boxes, and then New 52. So yeah, that's what I did. I'm telling you now, you don't need to do that the way that I did it. You don't need to buy those individual books. I thought it would be really cool to put all the books in the specific reading order that comic book reading order identified, because I could then read not just Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash. I would be reading an actual living organic universe. Like Batman interacts with Wonder Woman, who interacts with Flash, who interacts with Superman. I could do all of that, right? That would be true if the writers had been good enough to coordinate better, because once you get all the books in order like that and you start reading them, you realize that they didn't give it the consideration you thought it did. So what the hell was the point? But now I have it, and you can't go back. You can't just separate it into piles of the characters now. What the hell's wrong with you? It has to stay there. Would you take it apart? Of course you wouldn't. Too much work to realize it was a dumb idea. But anyway, those are my collections. Those are all my full runs. Those are full big runs. I don't count the smaller runs that I have. Like, here, I have it right here. Give me a second. Like, I have every issue of Shade the Changing Man. It's a full run, but it's not like what we're talking about here. I have every issue of Kung Fu Fighter. It's, you know what I mean? Like, it's like 24 issues. You don't need to go crazy calling it a full run. It technically is, but what we're talking about here is like more like beginning, middle, end, complete narratives. You know what I mean? So that's it. Those are my full runs. This video was an incredible pain in the ass to do, because all of these boxes fit beautifully in a closet that I have. I have them organized in a way where the books that I've read first are put furthest in the bottom, and then the ones that I haven't read are kind of up top and easily accessible, so I can get them out and read them. I actively read everything that I have, so accessibility to them is important to me. Good Lord, I knew that this was going to be a pain of like getting all these books out and being able to show them to you, but I hope you enjoyed them. If there's, and this is true, this is a challenge. I'm going to be doing my next video tomorrow. I'm going on a vacation this coming weekend. We're going to Chicago, me and the missus. I've never been. It should be fun. But I'm going to do a recording today, recording tomorrow. I'm going to be filming. I'll be posting my regular like Wednesday, Thursday video-ish, and then my other video I'll post near the weekend when it's done. But if any of these stories, if any of these books you want to see in more detail, I'll absolutely show them to you. But like, I need to know that that's what you want to see. This channel, I've been expressing myself a lot lately with some random ideas and stuff and fun content that I want to do. And I'm going to keep doing that. But I really wanted to return to like a comic book center. Like the last couple of videos I had, they got a little bit away from comic books. If there's anything in these you want to hear more about, any reviews, any like questions you have about like, hey, what are some key issues in those runs? Please leave it in the comment section and I will make a custom video for you, because you're beautiful and you deserve it. Maybe it's Maybelline, and maybe it's just me wanting to tell you how much I love you. Love you, bye. Okay, so no joke, I just spent like 10 minutes putting everything back in the closet. Like everything's back in there now. Look, the room's empty, right? And as I'm putting the boxes away, I realized I completely forgot to talk about 2 other collections that I had, but I'm not getting them back out to show you because I'm sweating like a priest in a daycare. They are The Question by Denny O'Neil. I love The Question. I'm currently reading right now the original, God, I'm out of breath. The original Charlton Comics run, and it's awful. So I think my memories and love for The Question come specifically from that Denny O'Neil series. But it's fantastic. And I also have all of Miracle Man by Alan Moore. So I love those series very much, and I didn't want to neglect them because I'm fat and sweaty. Now this is the real one. Love you, bye.